Welcome to the TTR vlog. Today's episode is all about the power of habits, controlling your reaction to student behavior with Pearl Habits. Super excited to talk about this. I love habits. Habits are the reason why I have gotten to be as successful as I am in the classroom, outside of the classroom, as a parent. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that I am ADHD and autistic, and that presents a lot of trouble with scheduling, impulse control, working memory, and habits. I rely on habits every day. I truly believe in them to solve a lot of the issues that we're seeing in the classroom. And so that's why I made it the first part of the Meet the Needs workshop series, because they are so important to me and I believe in them so much. And I know that the potential for transformation is just so big. So for more great tips and tricks on habits, check out the Power of Habits workshop, a part of the Meet the Needs workshop series. And I'm going to link the workshop series in the description below. So if you find yourself worn down or completely drained by student behavior in your classroom every week or every day, something as simple as taking a sip of water. And I know that this sounds ridiculous, but it's so true because it's a pause. Something as simple as taking a drink of water can completely rewire how you react to future behaviors in the classroom. So if you find yourself completely drained, whether it's by student behavior or it's by other negative interactions that tend to pop up, being a teacher, like negative parent interactions or stressful interactions we have with our admin, it's unavoidable. And we can get a better handle on how we react to those stressful negative interactions, and it really starts with automating our initial stress response, or what a lot of people like to call the trigger response. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this episode. So little habits, like taking a sip of water before responding to negative behavior or negative interactions, or using certain inner dialogue scripts before walking into tough conversations, can completely rewire your brain's reaction to challenging events inside and outside of the classroom. Those little habits are called Pearl Habits, and they are small, purposeful actions that become automatic and help you react with your thinking brain, that frontal cortex, and not your feeling brain or the limbic system. So these small changes build on one another, and they bring you more calm, less chaos, and fewer moments of regret from maybe overreacting or snapping, crying during an admin meeting, maybe. They're just they're a simple, easy way to dim down the amount of stress and overwhelm that you feel from these negative interactions. And especially if you're having them day to day, like they're consistent, you definitely want to practice something like this, because that stress compounds in your sympathetic nervous system, leading you to maybe to the first 2-3 interactions that you have, you're fine, you're good, you're cool. But after the 10th, you're crying in your car or completely losing your ever-loving mind on a fifth grader and then making them cry and nobody's happy and then you feel terrible, right? So it really starts with understanding our triggers, understanding how the stress response works, and understanding that our reactions, they're habits. It's an automatic response to a stimuli. It's a habit. And we can rewire them, we can completely change them with some understanding on how they work and patience. So, as teachers, we know the reality. We can't control students' behavior as much as we want to. We can't. Just like we can't control our neighbors, our partners, our friends, or even our own children. But this doesn't mean that all hope is lost. And it's not even like a bad thing, right? Because how dry and colorless would the world be if we could control everybody's behavior? And that sounds like a supervillain, actually. Anyway, so we can control how we respond. We can't control other people's behavior, but we can control our response. How frustrated we feel and how clear-headed we stay when we're reacting. What many people don't realize is that your immediate response to negative situations is a habit. When you use the Pearl Habits method, you're not starting from scratch, you're actually reshaping a habit you already have, which is a lot easier than starting completely from scratch. So, by changing our habitual responses, we save mental and emotional energy, which we need that all the mental and emotional energy we can possibly get, right? Without falling into negative thought spirals, rumination, or overwhelm. So, we're trying to create a calm mindset. We're having a reaction, an automatic reaction that creates a calm mindset that enables productive problem solving. That is our goal. So, Pearl Habits, created by BJ Fogg, are designed to help us control our reactions and stay positive when we face challenging, overwhelming moments that might be complete chaos and create times of chronic stress. You know, teaching, no big deal. So the idea is to build small, simple behaviors that over time transform how our brain responds to situations that typically trigger frustration, anger, or irritation. Pearl Habits can benefit everybody, but they are especially helpful for teachers who struggle to control their emotions and behaviors in response to challenging student behavior or negative interactions with staff, parents, or admin. If you are somebody who is prone to emotional flooding, emotional overwhelm, you get frozen, you can't think, Pearl Habits, they're for you. So, if you are someone who wants to reduce stress when responding to student behavior, you find it hard to detach from student actions, often taking them personally, you feel overstimulated, overwhelmed, or drained by difficult behaviors in the classroom. If this sounds like you should definitely keep watching, and you should definitely check out the Meet the Needs workshop series, the Power of Habits bonus workshop, linked in the description. So, when you start to use Pearl Habits, you're going to notice a slight shift right away. First, you'll find it easier to avoid slipping into negative thinking. And second, you won't feel as angry when behavior occurs. Instead, you're going, if if we're working on it, we're doing it correctly, we're following all the rules that I'm going to talk about now and I talk about in the workshop, you're going to start having an initial positive response. And it might be at first, ooh, I get an M&M, or whatever reward you set up for yourself for the Pearl habit. You're going to get a little jolt of dopamine. And eventually you start to pair that jolt of dopamine to the negative interaction that you experience, and that's how it rewires your brain. I'll get into it more. So let me explain. This shift from the negative automatic reaction that you have to student behavior, and you're replacing it with this positive reaction that you have paired with a special reward, like an M&M or a "Hey, I'm awesome" response, or maybe a script, an inner dialogue script that's like, "I'm really kind and patient." When you pair that negative student interaction with that hit of dopamine and that inner script or that M&M, you are training your brain to no longer have that fight or flight response in response to that negative student interaction. And this shift from a negative to a positive experience has even bigger implications for your overall joy and happiness, which is like really the key here, right? Like we don't want to just influence teachers inside the classroom. We want to influence teachers as people inside and outside of the classroom. So, as this mental practice becomes part of your natural thinking pattern, you'll see it influence interactions outside of the classroom, raising your overall optimism and lower stress levels. Pearl habits also boost compassion and empathy, giving you a surge of feel good chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin, which reduce stress even further. It's kind of a nice, calm cycle of feel goodness and positive mental energy. Yeah, that feels really good. I love taking a big, deep, calming breath. And that actually was my response. That was my trigger response, or the response that I paired to the behavior, the negative student behavior. Uh, and I'm going to go on like a side story here, but one time I had a student who was asking me a specific question, and I was getting frustrated because they were slow to grasp the concept that I was showing them. And the class was being really loud and noisy, which always happened in my classroom, because if it's not loud and noisy, I think kids aren't really learning, not to the depth that I want them to be. Knowledge is constructed. Anyway, that's another episode. So I was standing in front of the student. The um, teaching assistant, or the parapro, was standing next to me. And this student was getting frustrated. I was frustrated. And I ended up snapping at them and saying, "If you don't finish this, then you're not going to get any studio time." And in that moment, I realized what I'd done. My reaction, my automatic reaction that I was like I was training at the time, it was that. And I looked that student straight in the eye and said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so overwhelmed. That's not true. You're going to get studio time no matter what. Um, I just want you to do dot 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 dot." Um, And that student's relationship with me completely changed after that moment. One, because I apologized. Two, I modeled what I was teaching my kids. And three, I don't know why else did his and I really our relationship really flourished. And I do think it was that moment. Um, I let myself be vulnerable. I apologized. I modeled what I was doing. The vulnerability. I think teachers, they hold um this false sense of truth in that we have to know everything that's going on, every decision. We have to be confident. It's really hard to be vulnerable, especially if you're a young teacher. And that's all the kids want. They want a human in front of them, not a robot. Always, always, always allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of your students. It presents a piece of humanity. It brings a piece of humanity to it. That was a long tangent, but I'm famous for those. So anyway, okay, back to Pearl habits. So some terms I want you to know. One, tiny habit. A tiny habit is a small, manageable action you can easily repeat. A tiny habit is tiny, tiny, tiny. And if you want more information on tiny habits, I go over them in the workshop series. I cover them in my blog, which I will link in the description also. So that's tiny habit. Second term I want you to know, anchor moment. Anchor moment. That is a routine or situation that consistently happens, serving as a trigger for your new habit. Third, celebration. A small action to create a positive feeling and reinforce your new habit. A celebration could be as simple as saying, "I'm awesome," or eating an M&M. You're creating a positive feeling. You're creating a sense of a dopamine hit, essentially. And then the tiny habit recipe. And this is specifically from BJ Fogg's Tiny Habit book. The tiny habit recipe is a formula for implementing the habit, typically framed as after blank, I will blank. After the anchor moment, I will the tiny habit or the tiny behavior. So that's the tiny habit recipe. So I'm going to walk you through how to create Pearl habits for responding to challenging behaviors. The first thing you're going to do is identify the frustrating behaviors. Write down behaviors that consistently frustrate you. This is identifying your triggers, which I always suggest to my coaching clients. You cannot start any inner work if you do not know your triggers. And I just posted I think it's the second chapter of Raising Good Humans. I just posted that in the neighborhood. I definitely suggest if you struggle with how to identify your triggers, get the book Raising Good Humans, read chapter 2, or you can join the neighborhood. I'll link it in the description too. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do, identify frustrating behaviors, identify your triggers. Then you're going to prioritize triggers. Choose one that's particularly frustrating or frequent. This will be what's called your anchor moment. Remember that anchor moment I just mentioned? An anchor moment, a routine or situation that consistently happens. It serves as your trigger or your cue for a new habit. You're going to choose one that's particularly frustrating or frequent. It gets you red in the face, and it gets you red in the face a lot. This will be what's called your anchor moment. this is what's going to cue your habit. For mine in the classroom, it was feeling, honestly, it was feeling super overwhelmed. If I felt that super overwhelmed and I heard myself snap, that was the cue or the anchor moment that I needed to take that big, deep breath. I still do it. Anytime I hear now the word breath, like I just have to consciously stop myself. Or anytime I feel super, super, super overwhelmed. Now that I'm no longer in the classroom, it tends to happen when I have my toddler in public. So if you ever see me out at my air and I have my toddler in public and I'm going, it's my tiny habit. It's my Pearl habit. Okay, so we've gone over identifying frustrating behaviors, prioritizing the trigger, prioritizing you want to make sure that this is a negative behavior or negative interaction that consistently stresses you out. It happens a lot. Then you're going to create your response. You're going to find a simple positive action you can do right after encountering the anchor moment. Examples: take a sip of water, take a deep breath, or mentally remind yourself, I can do this. I'm calm. Okay? You're going to create the tiny response. Then you're going to celebrate. You're going to pick a small celebration that brings you joy or pride. This could be a mental, yes, I'm awesome, or yeah, I did it. Yes. A tally mark. Do not underestimate the power of checking something off a checklist or putting a tally mark to like visually represent that you just did something that you want to do. Okay? There's research that actually shows that doing both of those things increases dopamine levels in the brain. So do a tally mark or eat an M&M, right? Who doesn't like a tiny piece of chocolate? So you're going to identify frustrating behaviors. Okay? Prioritize the triggers. Find your anchor moment. What's going to cue your habit? Create your response. Is it going to be a big deep breath? Or is it going to be a script that says, I am calm. I can do this? Or is it going to be taking a sip of water? You're going to find your tiny response that works for you. And then you're going to celebrate. You're going to give yourself a little dopamine hit by saying, yes, I am awesome. Checking something off or creating a tally mark or having an M&M. So some examples of Pearl habits in the classroom. There are a lot of practical examples out there, and I'm going to illustrate a few that I've seen or heard from teachers who have used this method, and it worked for them. So, a student was constantly getting up and asking their teacher a question, right? And this teacher made that student getting out of their seat and heading towards them the anchor moment because it was really annoying her. And so every time the student got up, she saw the student getting up and walking towards her. She took a deep breath and she smiled. And no matter if she had to fake it to make it, she did it. And her celebration was she did a mental script of, I am kind and patient. Another one, a student consistently makes inappropriate comments, and a teacher paired the inappropriate comment with taking a sip of water, which paused and grounded her and also got in the water intake that she was trying to get. Like, that was another goal of hers. And she mentally reminded herself, I'm calm and I'm in control. And she did the tally on the post-it. So these tiny habits reinforce joy and help rewire your brain to be more optimistic, keeping you from slipping into a stress response caused by frustration or annoyance. If you want even more habits and tips, check out the Power of Habits workshop, a part of the Meet the Needs workshop series, and you can check it out in the description below. Let me know if you have a habit that you're working on, or if you have any questions by commenting, and make sure that you subscribe for all of the great teaching, behavior, learning, and the brain content that Teaching to a Riot provides. Bye, everybody.